Latinas are not trad wife. Today we are going to discuss. Today, well, this is Sunday, another weekend that we are just going to relax about economics, geopolitics, offshore affairs, nearshoring, tariffs, because, basically half of my job right now is just keep up with tariffs. But today we're going to talk about something a little bit different, and is this particular rhetoric, this particular narrative that Western expats have regarding dating Latinas, and especially in Latin America, of course, and thinking that they are trad wives, and well, compared to the American and European counterparts. And the answer is, they are trad wives? The answer is hell no. Now, they are more traditional compared with, an American, a European, Australian, or something like that. Well, that is something that we are going to discuss today. So let's start. Okay, the first thing, how an average Latina is. They are trad, they are step for wives, they bake and do things like that. Well, honestly, I cook better than 90% of the women in Latin America that I have dated. And I'm no Gordon Ramsay, I'm no Anthony Bourdain, anything like that. So you can tell. Now, most of them actually, they like to do, pastry, do cakes, things like that. Just a funny anecdote. Now, I understand why many Western men think like that. Because, of course, you date, I don't know, especially let's say you are in college or you are fresh out of college, and you saw the average American women that with body counts on the triple and sometimes quadruple digits, and sometimes, like 3-4 guys on the same day, and you think, okay, in other countries must be different. And I will say the attitude is the same, it's just the amount is what is not as far-fetched. Now, let's go with Latin America. How are women in Latin America? They do things like that? Well, a handful of the women, yes. Now, what happens is that in Latin America, the everyday survival is not as easy as in the United States or several other Western countries, where, people complain about, oh, I want to be a giraffe, I want to be, a penguin, and that's my sexual orientation, something like that. But in Latin America, they don't have that particular problem because they have to care about real things. Of course, there are a handful of, cuckoo people that think, oh, I'm penguin sexual or something like that. But, well, it happens. And of course, most people in the US are not like that, but a significant cohort it is. Usually people divorce with reality, and most of the time are young ladies. It is what it is. Now, what happens in Latin America is that it's not like women are, step for wives or something like that. Actually, they are usually, like most women, narcissistic. They care about, posting on Instagram and having a nice standard of living, paid by someone else and things like that. And also you see many forms of quote unquote sex work. OnlyFans models, OF creators, sugar babies, and the traditional, arts of selling your body. Okay. Now, what's going on is that it's a little bit, not more, but a little bit more, your reputation is a little bit more important for a young lady in Latin America. A little bit more. And the other thing is that you have less opportunities in order to grow socioeconomically. Because unlike the US, that, let's say, you want to cover just your expenses, your bare expenses. You can be a waiter, you can be a barista, you can be something like that. And actually, if you put the hard work on a career, you can become technically a millionaire, being a dentist or paralegal, something like that. I mean, you can become a millionaire with those professions if you do everything right and yada yada. It's just, putting the work. In Latin America, doesn't work like that. Most opportunities, there are a lot of people competing for a handful of opportunities. That, of course, those opportunities exist, but they are very reduced and there is a lot of nepotism involved. One of the reasons why Latin America is not completely developed, and I mentioned this a bunch of times here on the platform. Yeah. But what happens is that in Latin America, both men and women compete a lot with status. They want to pretend they have more status that they actually have. So, unlike the US, that women, let's say many women, that they don't have this mindset. I think generally most women don't want to have this mindset, but they do. So in Western countries, you have a significant cohort of women that they want to date, this typical Disney, prince or something like that in fantasy that in real life does not exist. So they dedicate to work on a career or something like that. And they don't care about being pleasant to men because they don't need to. They can cover their material necessities. Now, if they want, being on a yacht or something like that, that's when they go, with the, let's say, oldest profession on his several variants, like OF. Now, in Latin America, you are not going to have that choice, especially if you're a female, because, like I said, the opportunities are far and few between. And what will happen is that, okay, you can be a boss babe and work on yourself. And some women have that attitude in Latin America, but let's say in the West, it's like 50%. In Latin America, it's like 20% tops. And even some of them also, they have that duality that they are boss babes, but they also want, satisfy their financial hypergamy. So at the end of the day, the Latin American women don't have that luxury. If they want to be a feminist, usually are, like a spoiled child feminist, not real feminist like you see on Western Europe, that women are actually real feminists over there. So they have equal rights to men and they exercise those rights. In Latin America, it's not the case. They are spoiled childs that when they, when it's convenient, they are feminists, but most of the time, they are just spoiled girls. Well, what happens is that you cannot be completely, let's say, completely repulsive regarding your attitude towards men, because you are gonna need men in order to, have a better socioeconomic status, or just sometimes it's just because when people are actually nicer, have more relationships, interpersonal relationships. You want to make more friends. You usually have a community and family and things like that. So that also happens. That's, let's say, one of the perks of dating in Latin America. Now, if you come from the West, here is the reality compared to the narrative that you see from the passport bros or people like that. Well, what happens is that, yes, you're going to have a tactical advantage, but it's not because women here are step-for wives or something like that. It's because a spread on socioeconomic status. For instance, I explained this, and I'm going to keep explaining this because I see this very interesting, that in the US, according to each generation, boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, and Gen Zers, in order to be quote unquote financially successful, boomers see something like $100,000 per year, and Gen Xers 120, and millennials 150, something like that. But Gen Zers have an amount of $500,000 per year in order to be successful. And this happens because most of the Gen Zers that grew up with social media, they see a bunch of yachts and parties and Ibiza and Mykonos and things like that. And those lifestyles are just a rounding error of the people of the world that actually can afford them. So if you don't have that particular, lifestyle, Instagram lifestyle with Lambos and Ibiza and Mykonos, kind of like the Tinder swindler, something like that. If you don't cover that particular lifestyle threshold, you're just a loser or something like that. That's the mindset, especially on women. So what happens is that in order to satisfy the hypergamy, women need a guy that can cover those things, but statistically, it's very rare. Also, most of the guys that can cover that particular lifestyle usually are not, male models or athletes or people like that. Usually are most millionaires are around 60 years old and they are married already. But, well, it is what it is. So the expectation becomes draconian compared to the reality. And that's one of the main reasons why you have a terrible dating market in the United States. Because let's say you're watching this and you're making, let's say, $100,000 per year, which is, in the US, it's very doable if you're consistent, and the rest of the world is next to impossible, but it's not easy. And women see you, oh, you're a loser, you just make $100,000 per year, but that is actually difficult to achieve. It's not impossible, it requires consistency, but still a lot of work indeed. And women are not valuing that particular, threshold because they think they are quote unquote losers because they're not making $500,000. So when you go to Latin America, same thing, the same expectation with socioeconomic status. Women want a higher socioeconomic status. Remember that in Latin America, most people have a salary. I'm talking on the median, the bell curve distribution, the median income. Usually the salaries are lower compared to what you need in order to cover, let's say, middle class standard of living. So in Latin America, they have to think, they live usually large families together. They also know how to solve problems, like, mechanics or electricity or plumbing, something like that, in order to try to catch up. Still in Latin America, women watch Instagram and things like that, and they have a higher expectation compared to the actual reality on, let's say, just for the sake of the conversation, Colombia. So the lifestyle that they want is a top 0.5% in Colombia. Fancy travel to nice restaurants in Medellin and San Andres Island and Cartagena, things like that. Let's put it, the Colombian standard for lifestyle and luxurious lifestyle, whatever might be the case. But just a handful of people can cover that in Colombia. Now, if you move to Colombia, and I'm not saying move to Colombia, but several clients already did. Shout out to them, by the way. And what happens is with the people, let's say you're the guy making $100,000 per year in the US. You come to Colombia, and actually you can cover that particular lifestyle of the 0.5% of Colombians. Now, the issue is that in Latin America, when someone is rich, it's not like they're making $100,000 or $200,000 per year. They are millionaires, but are real millionaires, not 401k millionaires, not passive income, building equity millionaires, not crypto millionaires. They are real millionaires. They have actually the real money without debt or any significant debt. Something to keep up. So if you want to show off because you make 100,000, please don't do it. It's a tricky thing that you have to navigate. You need to have realistic expectations, but the market, the experience overall is going to be way better than in the US, but it's not going to be this panacea also if you haven't experienced yourself. So that will be the main advantage. The unrealistic expectations from Latinas in Latin America are going to be realistic for yourself if you are a mildly successful man from the West. Of course, combining that with some intangibles like your presence, your attitude, maybe if you know some Spanish, things like that. But that will be the main point and the realistic expectation for dating in Latin America. What is unrealistic for the local market is actually realistic if you are a mildly successful Western citizen. Thank you for watching Continental Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. follow us on social media, and if you want to work with us, continentalinsider.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.